I'm Adrienne Enns, and I welcome you to the Intention Sessions podcast. I want to inspire our most intentional living. In each episode, we'll talk to remarkable individuals who will share their authentic journeys and their insights with us. They're going to remind us that life's complexities can be our greatest teachers, and that intentional living can be expressed in an infinite number of ways. I hope you find some inspiration for your most intentional life right here. Today on the podcast, we have Tony Colley. Tony is a sustainability entrepreneur. He's developed an app called B12Give, combating food insecurity via the redistribution of surplus, unsold, prepared food from retail operators. The app creates a circular food economy, rescuing and redistributing surplus food to shelters within the hour of receipt. Tony aims to lower retailers' carbon footprint by providing healthy, nourishing meals to the estimated 5.6 million Canadians who are currently suffering from food insecurity. I met Tony earlier this year. We were both participating in a speaking competition, and that's where I heard his story and about the incredible work that he's doing. So I wanted him to come on here and share with all of us what he's up to. So Tony, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you for having me, Adrienne, and I hope everything's going well with you.
Everything's good. And I just thought, I wanted you to share the work that you're currently doing because everything has even changed so much since I met you in February. But I do want to start with your journey because that's what I heard in that story. And I just think it's always so fascinating, how we end up doing the work that we're doing. So do you mind sharing with these people, what led you to do this work?
Sure. Well, in 2016, my work history had consisted of 16 years with two national banks, 4 years in the nonprofit sector, and 2 years as an entrepreneur. At that same time in my life, I had no job, no money, really literally $278 to my name, had to apply for social assistance, and became food insecure for the first time in my life at 44 years old. Now, I've never been in a state of mind like this before, so it was a lot to deal with. So of course, yes, I fell into a depression, but I knew that at the same time I needed to focus on getting myself and my life back together. I'd never been in a position like this before, so it was all brand new to me. So the steps I had to take had to be strong and confident steps, although I was probably weak at the knees for a good couple of years after the situation occurred. But I was able to find a part-time job working in hospitality a couple of months later. And in that job, I began to notice that we had some surplus food left over after our events. It wasn't a lot. It wasn't too egregious, but most of the staff at the events were taking the food home. So there was very little waste that was happening afterwards. But about 6 months into this job, I was online. I read an article that said in 2015, Canada had a $31 billion food waste issue. Now, obviously, food waste wasn't a thing for me because I had none to waste. But at the end of the article, I said out loud they should feed this food to the homeless. About 6 months later, I'm on site at an event working with our largest catering partner. And at the end of a 12-hour shift, the CEO offered me a job. Within weeks, I was on site managing my first event. And at the end of the event, we had over 100 boxed lunches left over. And right away, I reflected back on that article that I'd read with regards to Canada's food waste issue. So I questioned the service director at the event, and I said, what are we to do with the surplus food? And she said, please share it with the staff and the vendors and to dispose of the rest. So immediately I said, well, wait a minute, can we not donate some of this food? And she mentioned that they didn't have the capacity to donate it because, being a catering company, they had to get back to the kitchen and prepare everything for the next day. And because this food was prepared for today, it could not be repurposed. They had to dispose of it. So I offered to rescue what I could and did so every event thereafter on my bike until about a year into the process. So this was roughly the summer of 2018. So about 2 years after my predicament had began. And at this event, there was too much food to rescue. I couldn't rescue it all. I didn't have the proper resources. to do it. And on my way to the shelter, on my bike, frustrated, sweating in the middle of the summer, rescuing this food, an Uber Eats driver whips past me with one of those bags on his back. And I just made an offhand comment, I need to get one of those bags. It'll make this process easier, and I could always repurpose it and use it for my own groceries. When I got home, I researched the bag. It was $40, and the light bulb went off in my head. And I said, wait a minute, I wonder if I could hire drivers to do rescues for me, and how would I pay them to do it? And then that immediately had my mind wondering, well, what other type of retailers would need or could benefit from this service? Grocery stores, hotels, convention centers, food courts. The list just went on and on and on. So right away, I'm saying, well, wait a minute, what is our food waste issue now? What are we dealing with food insecurity? What food rescue or food waste diversion apps are out there now? And what are food rescue organizations doing to combat this issue? And I noticed that there was a gap in the marketplace when it came to the rescuing of surplus prepared food from retailers like I just mentioned. And I figured I would just take it upon myself to develop this platform. I didn't know where it was going to go, but I simply, I just kept going to work. I kept doing my job. I kept rescuing the food. On my days off, I would do research, and I would go out and I would ask grocery stores, restaurants, hotels, conventions, anybody I could possibly think of. And I began asking them questions about what they were doing with their surplus food. And most of them were saying that they were disposing of it because they had no other place to put it. And because it was prepared, I'm targeting prepared food. That is the food that needs to be consumed within 24 hours. Most of that food, because of its shelf life, people don't really think about rescuing that type of food, because most of the food rescue agencies out there are focused on products that are either dry goods that have a bit of a shelf life, either some produce, and most of them take this food and they take it back and they either repurpose it and make other meals and redistribute it to the community, or they take it and they sort it in their sorting centers and then redistribute to different shelters and agencies around the GTA. So I realized that I could easily fill that gap as long as I had the best platform that I could actually share with the market. And I did so. And about a year later, it was roughly the summer of 2019, I launched B12Give, as you introduced in the beginning of the show. In November, we secured our first client, which was my former employer. And since we launched, we've rescued over 12,000 pounds of food, feeding more than 9,100 people in the city of Toronto.
It's amazing. Like, it's just incredible. And I really love in this whole story, just how, let me use, I guess, a food term, but like the breadcrumbs were laid for you, and just,
Yep.
How like the Uber driver just goes by, sometimes we get the information when we're researching, and other times it's like these signs come to us, and you were just so open to them.
Yeah, I have to admit that every step, like now that I look back at it, I can see the road that was, or as you say, the breadcrumbs that were laid. I can see them. I see how everyone lined up in front of the other and created this path for me to travel that I had no idea I was on. I was simply trying to recover from my scenario. Being food insecure and being on social assistance. I was 44 years old and I had a professional career for 20 years. This was not the place that I anticipated myself being in ever, let alone for two plus years at the time when this idea came to me. So, it was something that I was dealing with and grappling with on a regular basis. I didn't anticipate my volunteerism turning into the business that it has, but the fact that I can see how each, as you say, breadcrumb was laid out for me and allowed me to just sort of travel this path and get down this road, and the amount of support and recognition that I received over the past number of months. CBC, actually, City TV was the first one to pick up on our story. I was just tagging different news outlets in all of my posts when I was rescuing food, and City News was doing a story on Ontario's food waste issue back in January. And they called me up and said, can we feature your platform with our story? And I said, sure, why not? And they actually led their story with my platform and with a couple of my clients that I've been working with. And then that just propelled another news outlet, CBC Toronto. I was nominated for one of their Community Champion Awards and won. And they wanted to do a larger story on my platform, and they launched this story back, I think it was early March. and it was on on all three of their platforms. And the response that we got from that, I received over 24 inbound sales calls from the likes of University of Toronto, McMaster University, Tourism Toronto, Law Society of Ontario, hotel groups, Cadillac Fairview. They own multiple malls across, actually around the world, but they own several malls across the GTA. So to have that type of feedback and that type of response from corporations like this looking to integrate my platform into their daily operations was phenomenal. As I said, I never anticipated my volunteerism growing to the capacity that it has, but knowing that I was able to go through, what I shared with you earlier, move through that process, volunteer my time at the end just to give back to those who were less fortunate than I was. I was still food insecure, but I knew I also suffered from food allergens. So, excuse me, I couldn't eat certain foods, and there was so much food that we would have left over at events that I couldn't consume. I'm like, you know what, this can't go in the garbage. We can do something more with this. Let's take this to those who can consume it and would benefit from it the most. And now it's turned into this platform where I'm able to offer my services to, major grocery store chains who have national locations and offer them a redistribution service that they've never, or that Canada has never seen before. So it's really exciting.
It's amazing. And I want to dive into the conversation further about the platform and how it actually works so that people can understand it. But before we do, you and I have talked about this before, but I want to share it here. I want to circle back to the basics first, because we hear the term food insecurity all the time, but I don't want to assume that we know exactly what it means. So and I understand there are different levels of it. Can you talk to us first about the basics of food insecurity and what it actually means?
So in a nutshell, food insecurity, so I'll explain to you in as sort of in clinical terms. So food insecurity has three categories: mild, moderate, and severe. So mild food insecurity is when you're worrying about the ability to obtain food. So that doesn't say that you are without food. It's just that maybe you're living paycheck to paycheck and you're trying to make sure that you have enough food to feed yourself and or your family on a regular basis. Moderate food insecurity is when you are now compromising quality and quantity of meals. And that is where you're either purchasing food that is unhealthy for you, but it's cheaper, and or reducing the amount of food intake that you are consuming on a daily basis. So skipping meals and things of that nature. And then severe food insecurity is when you are experiencing hunger on a regular daily basis. So in my case, I was suffering from moderate food insecurity. As I mentioned, I suffer from food allergens, so I was not able to compromise the quality of food I was eating. So I was forced to reduce the quantity of meals I was eating. And to put that in context, my first meal of the day for more than a year was at 3 p.m., 4 p.m., roughly in the afternoon. And that was just sort of how I went through my daily life. I had a roommate at the time who I'd been living with at this point for probably 6 years, who had no idea that I was suffering like this. She had no idea what I was going through. And simply because my job allowed me to, my mornings were my own. I would end up at work around 3, 4 in the afternoon sometimes, where she would be at work already. She would come home at night and she would see me eating dinner like a normal person. So she never witnessed the fact that I would go 6, 7 hours a day without eating a meal. It was just something that she was never alerted to. So, and many people in our communities are suffering like this, where we would never know. We call them the working poor. They're getting up every day. They're going to their jobs and they don't have enough food to eat. And I'm sure people nowadays, it's not so prevalent because people are working from home. But, at a point, once I was able to share my story, there were a number of people who came up to me and were saying things like, I've had to deal with this in my life. I was eating 1 or 2 meals a day for a few months because I was either unemployed, looking for another job. Any instance of where you were lacking proper resources, primarily financial resources, to purchase food. People are there are food insecure communities. Most people assume it's just in the shelter systems, but having launched this platform, I've been contacted by organizations who have started food sharing kind of platforms or networks, I should say, in communities across the GTA. There's one in North York, there's one in out on the East End. In the West, this one lady started this platform in North York, just on Facebook, of food sharing for people who are food insecure in their homes. And she now has 7 different chapters, for lack of a better term, across the GTA, where people are able to set up this platform. It's on Facebook, and they join this group, and people who have surplus food go in and say that we have this, and people who are in need say, I need XYZ, and they just start their food sharing piece. So food insecurity it's not just in the shelter systems, and that's what thing I've had to learn myself. But also, I think it's important that Canadians learn as a whole. We have 5.6 million Canadians who are food insecure since COVID started, and that number continually climbs on a regular basis.
Well, that's what was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
When I heard your story, we had no idea of what was around the corner. Like, so how does this and your work, like, how is it all? I mean, this is a tiny question. How is it all impacted by COVID?
So as I shared earlier, we had the national press in early March, and I received all those inbound sales calls. Literally a week later, COVID shut us down.
Yeah.
So my clients were done. I was done, and as an entrepreneur and somebody who was just coming out of the scenario I found myself in earlier. Just a few years earlier, I was devastated. I'm like, how is my business going to recover from this? My clients are all closed. My clients are food retailers. But then, literally within days, I watched food insecurity become national news, where news networks were talking about how food banks are running dry, how food banks are shutting down, how shelters aren't being serviced now because, the food rescue agencies that were dealing with food processors and manufacturers, their clients are now shutting down. So the food systems, COVID really amplified the inequities in our food systems across Canada. It showed that people who are without are suffering even more now from a pandemic. And, restaurants and retailers that were shut down, I watched them. How can I explain this? They were basically looking to source individuals that would be willing to redistribute their food for them so that it wouldn't go bad. And then I watched dozens of ad hoc food programs pop up, just like what I was doing, redistribution services, and they basically beta tested my platform en masse. So I'm sitting back and I'm watching food insecurity become national news. I'm watching food redistribution services pop up all over the city in order to help retailers redistribute their surplus foods to those agencies that were lacking these resources. And I'm sitting back and I'm watching my platform get executed by strangers all over the city. And I said to myself, if there was a better time for my platform than now, then I would like to know when. Because
Yeah.
at this point in time, it's now amplified that we need to utilize surplus food resources to combat food insecurity. And the distribution services that were set up, they were ad hoc, they were volunteer. A lot of those people had full-time jobs or have full-time jobs, have businesses or had businesses. And now those people are back into their daily lives. So those food programs are no more. There may be one or two still out there remaining, but most of them have pretty much shut down, which really opened the door for, not even opened the door, but reopened every single door that had been closed due to COVID by amplifying the need for my platform. So I'm just excited to get this process up and running again. We're almost completed. The app is almost finished. So once we're able to get this up and running and pitch this product offering to these retailers, it's full steam ahead. So I'm dare I say lucky that COVID happened, because we will probably be the ones, actually, not even we. Yes, we will benefit, but our end users will benefit even more from what we've done to date, and what we're going to do in the future. So I'm just looking forward to, what a post-COVID world looks like when it comes to food redistribution and how we're able to service our clients and really combat food insecurity across Canada. And because of COVID, they anticipate food insecurity to double based upon recent statistics by the end of 2020. We're now at the end of September, so we're in our last quarter of 2020. CERB has ended, So people who are receiving CERB, where are their next month's income coming from? Nobody knows that. Yes, there is an EI piece coming into play. What that looks like, we don't know. Who will qualify, we don't know. So food insecurity is continually climbing. And, it was 5.6 million in May or June. I can only anticipate it being close to 8 million now and by the end of the year. So, yes, it's unfortunate that COVID has done this to the world, but at the same time, for us, we have been fortunate because it amplified the need for businesses like ours to really take control of redistributing surplus food to communities in need.
Yeah, and like you said, like we don't welcome these problems, but there's a solution. That there is food and it can be distributed, and you've already started this amazing platform. So, yeah, your time is now and we need you. So, tell us how the app works and how the whole system works. Like, can you give us a scenario to help us understand like how it would be used on any given day?
Sure. So let's say a retailer like Sobeys, I'll use as an example. Sobeys has 1,500 locations across Canada. What we do is we offer a retailer like Sobeys. I should share that we are targeting the hot food counters and the prepared food at these retailers. That's the food that, as I mentioned, only has a shelf life of maybe 24 to 48 hours tops. So those prepackaged salads, sandwiches, all of that type of stuff that has a limited shelf life. That's what we're looking at, because that is the food that doesn't have to be cooked or prepared anywhere. It can easily just be consumed right away. So a retailer like Sobeys has this type of food in abundance every single day. At the end of the day, unfortunately, that food ends up in the garbage because they have no place to put it. It's either discounted. So what we do is we offer retailers 10, 20, or 30 pickups a month at $10, $20, or $50 per pickup. The price point is based upon average weight per pickup. So the $10 is for 10 pounds or less, $20 is for 10 to 50 pounds, and $50 is for 50 to 100 pounds. And what we do is we offer the platform to the retailer. It's a universal app. So if a Sobeys were to sign up, everyone in that location would have access to the app. So their different departments, their meat departments, produce, whatever, dry goods, or whatever departments can use the app. And all they do is they simply enter in the amount of items that they have to redistribute and hit submit. It's really that simple.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I wanted to make the system easily integrated within their operation, so it's not too much of an imposition on what they're doing on a regular basis. Because the one thing is, if we're offering a service to you, we don't want you to take your employee base and assign resources to a service that takes up or takes them away from what their role is in your operations. So we want to make sure that the service was really quick and really fast. So they literally just select number of items, hit submit, the order populates on the app, and it sits there until the drivers are active. Once the drivers are active, the platform runs from 6 p.m. to midnight. So once the drivers are active, they go out, they see an order, they select the order, the app directs them. It's similar to an Uber style pickup where the app directs the driver to the nearest location. Once that driver selects that order, the driver scans the client's app to acknowledge that the order has been retrieved. And then the driver goes out and does the same thing again at the next client until their capacity has been maxed, and they take that and they redistribute whatever they have to the nearest shelter. And they continue that process until all of their clients have been serviced throughout the night.
It's just amazing. Because you do think, when you're standing in the grocery store, like of just how abundant and plentiful it looks in front of you. And to have this redistributed it just makes so much sense. But I don't need to tell you that. So tell me about the shelters on the other end. Like how do the drivers know where to go?
So every shelter has to sign up into the app. So our core stakeholders are our clients, of course, who have the food, the drivers who are redistributing the food, and the shelters who are receiving the food. So the shelter systems, each stakeholder has to sign into the app. They fill in their profile, and once that profile is complete, they're given, in this case, the shelters are given an ID number, and that ID number automatically will allow the shelters to be pre-populated into the app on a nightly basis. So every shelter will always have an active icon in our systems while the drivers are out redistributing the food. And then whenever a shelter is serviced, the shelter then enters their 4-digit ID into the driver's phone, and their icon goes dark, for lack of a better term, to indicate that they've been serviced that night.
Amazing.
And it allows all the other drivers, the system is so that all of the other drivers don't see each other on the platform. They only see active orders and active shelters.
Okay.
And as they service them, each order goes dark and each shelter goes dark. And it just continues on until all clients and all shelters. No, I shouldn't say all shelters, because we don't anticipate being able to service every single shelter every single night. But what we will do is try to service as many as we can based upon their profile, and service them on days that they are not being serviced by other agencies, so that they're not receiving double the amount of food that they would normally receive on any given day, forcing them to dispose of some of this food themselves. So we service them on their off days to ensure that the food that we're providing to them is being consumed and not having to be wasted in any way, shape, or form.
So Tony, what is your hope for this long term?
Well, I guess so. Ideally, I would love to be able to eliminate food insecurity across Canada.
Yeah.
That would be my ideal dream. If I'm able to implement a platform that's able to redistribute surplus food resources from, Sobeys was just an example, but we have at least a half a dozen or more major grocery store chains that own several other grocery store chains. So if I were to be able to secure every single grocery store across Canada and redistribute that food to shelters or community agencies across Canada, one, we'd be able to service all the shelter systems and the community agencies that are needing food resources. But then our plan is to implement sort of how can I explain this? Like a Meals on Wheels type system, where we will then partner up with community agencies or community kitchens, and take any surplus that we have from servicing the shelters and take that surplus and start servicing food insecure communities. So if there is a sector within a certain city, let's say, for instance, the lady in North York who has that system already in play, I would most likely partner with her and say, listen, we have surplus food coming your way on any given Tuesday or any given Friday of any week. Would we be able to establish a system where you would take this food, break it down into individual meals, and then we would implement a home delivery service for food insecure families that don't reside in the shelter systems. So we really want to make sure that we're servicing everybody who's food insecure and not just those in the shelter systems. We will do as much as we can for those individuals, but we want to make sure that communities across Canada are being services, First Nations communities who need food and clean water. There's no reason why we can't take our maybe some produce or uncooked product that can be frozen, for instance, and take it to these communities and redistribute to those communities. I really want to basically, I want to eliminate food insecurity in Canada. If I'm able to do that, then that's really what my goal is. And if I can't eliminate, at least tackle it as much as I can to lessen the impact of what's happened or what's happening right now in the midst of COVID-19. So that would be my ultimate goal. And then anything beyond that, we would partner up with biogas plants and start redistributing any surplus beyond all of our work to biogas facilities across the country to ensure that we are eliminating all food waste. If I'm able to eliminate food waste, great. But, I have a feeling that with food waste will always be a constant. I'm able to tackle it in the in the retail. Some of the processing and manufacturing, we're not there yet, but definitely within the retail sector, consumers make up 47% of our food waste, our national food waste issue. And that's coming from home food waste, which is normally what we call unavoidable food waste, which is food garbage. So that's another avenue that I'd have to look into. That's sort of like a waste collection division that I may be able to launch in the business down the road. But for now, we're just looking at surplus prepared food resources from, the grocery stores, the hotels, the convention centers, and so forth. and redistributing as much as we can to as many communities and as many individuals as we can across Canada.
It's incredible. So for just to confirm, for right now, this is it started in Toronto, and for right now, it's still available just in Toronto.
Yes, we
Okay.
launched a pilot just in the city of Toronto, sorry,
Yeah.
and we've gotten a lot of attention from that. So we plan to scale across the GTA, and then once we're scaling across the GTA, we can then start implementing the service in other cities across Canada because the infrastructure is the same. We're not recreating the wheel at any point. The system and the service that we offer is the exact same in Toronto as it is in British Columbia, as it is in Nova Scotia. So it's really just getting the infrastructure set up in every city and scaling that platform with the retailers that we have in those cities until we're able to scale the entire country.
Awesome. Okay, now I have two more questions for you.
Sure, go ahead.
I never have just one. I always have like a million, so I'm just picking two. But, first of all, and sometimes I have to ask them in Paris so I don't forget.
Yep.
So here's my first question is like, we don't know who is listening to this podcast. So
Right.
let's assume it's a wide open net. My first question is going to be like, what do you need? Like, how can people listening, like, I want your wish list of how they can help you. And then the second question is, in the spirit of our intentional living, I always love to give some listeners like really practical tips of simple things that they can be doing in their daily lives to start making a difference. So these are my two questions. So let's start with the big one. But like, what do you need?
Right now, it's the primary need is for food retailers. I mean,
Okay.
I've been doing. I've done this on my own up
Yes.
until 2 months ago. I hired my first staff member. So I had to
Yeah.
swallow that for a second. Like I was like, wow, I just realized that. So I hired my first staff member 2 months ago. She's absolutely awesome. But right now I'm just waiting for the app to come to fruition. So once it's deployed to the App Store and the Play Store, I will then start my sales strategy, which is to contact all of those inbound sales, all of those inbound sales calls that I received in March and re-engage with those retailers to say, hi, we're back in business. The app is ready. We're able to service you and just get the word out. So if anybody's listening, if they either work for a food retailer or know someone that works for or owns a food retailer, just either send them our way, let them know what's happening, encourage them to do something with their food waste. One thing I will say is that grocery stores are up 500% since COVID started, which means that their food resources are up as well. So if we're able to, I don't know what their numbers look like because grocery stores especially aren't willing to share information like that. But I do know that that of course they're being used more because a lot of the restaurants had shut down and people weren't able to eat out as often. But if their usage has increased by 500%, their resources have also increased. And if we're able to gather those resources and redistribute now even more than ever because the number of food insecure individuals continues to rise. So if we're able to say, listen, Sobeys or Metro or Longo's or Loblaws, like any of these grocery stores, if anybody that out there is listening, we have a platform. We have a unique platform that doesn't impede on any other food rescue agency or partnership that they currently have in place. They are able to exhaust any other relationship that they have because we are the final stop on the supply chain. Sorry. So they can reduce their food. They can donate some food to a different agency if they want to redistribute some dry goods somewhere. We are targeting, as I said, those hot food counters, that prepared food, anything that has a shelf life of less than 48 hours is really what we're looking for. And that is the type of food that all of these grocery retailers have, and that is the type of food that we want. So if anybody out there that's listening that works for or owns or is affiliated with or has a brother, sister, mother, father, daughter, anybody that works in
we want
this
everybody.
Everybody, just let them know. B12Give is available. It's a unique platform. It's innovative. It's an immediate solution. It's easily scalable across all of their locations across the country. and it's easily integrated within their daily operations.
Amazing. And then I'm also going to do a shout out for you. I'm going to ask on your behalf if there are any, like investors or media people to help you build and scale and get the word out. It's just an incredible cause.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And so what about somebody also listening who's but who, is inspired and, so whether they're participating directly in your platform, but what could they be doing in their day-to-day life to make a difference?
So, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, consumers make up 47% of our food waste issue.
Yeah.
Now, we're all consumers. Everybody that purchases food is a consumer. When people go to the grocery store, and I'm glad to say that I'm not one of these individuals, but when most people go to the grocery store, they just buy whatever they want. They go in, they want this, they want that, they want this, they want. And then when they get home, they have enough food in their fridge, whether it's they are single, they have, or a couple or a family, they always have more than, or just more than enough food to last them until their next grocery run.
Mm-hmm.
My attitude is this: instead of buying everything you want, only buy what you need and you know that you can consume, so that your fridge is bare by the next time you go to your next grocery run. That way you are practically eliminating the opportunity to dispose of any food that you've purchased. Dry goods, of course, have a longer shelf life. If you want to stock up, so be it. I'm one to do that. I'm always one to purchase more of a dry good and just have it in my cupboards just to have. But I only purchase what I can use and I know that I can consume. So if I'm like, for instance, as I said, I have food allergens, so I'm gluten, dairy free. And this has sort of been forced upon me. It's not a choice. So when I go to the grocery store, I know what foods I can eat and I know what I can purchase and I know what I can consume within a certain period of time. And that's how I shop. I don't spend hundreds of dollars in the grocery store on a monthly basis. I think I may spend on a monthly basis roughly $100 to $150 on food, and I eat everything that I purchase. So if you are actually really focused on what you consume, how much you consume, you will not only lower your grocery bill, but you will lower the amount of food that you are disposing of because you weren't able to eat it all. And that's just natural. Like if you go into the grocery store, just don't buy everything you want. Buy what you need and you know what you can consume.
I just think it's an important message because we can all be more mindful. I know that I can be, and, just more conscious of our choices, and all of these things can have a really important, valuable impact.
Yeah, it really would. I mean, consumers, because we are so focused on, consumption, but also having access to what we want, people never want to feel as if they're running out of something.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, we're running out of this. We need to get more of this. That's the way people operate. That's just natural. I'm one of those people. If I see them running out of soap, for instance, I need to buy more soap. But when it comes to food, I never say, oh, I'm running out of this, I need to buy more. I purposefully run out of something before I go buy more. And I think that's what people need to do more: intentionally run out of your food. Because if you're running out of your food, that means you're not wasting it.
Yes.
People, and this is really sort of a side topic, but one thing I've always been really confused by is when people, grocery retailers or manufacturers or processors, sell products. For instance, this is a really little one, but cilantro, for instance. And I say that because I eat a lot of avocados, and I make guacamole quite often. I always have to purchase a whole bunch of cilantro.
Yeah.
And then I only use a bit of it, and I have to throw the rest in the garbage because I have no use for it because it lasts maybe 2-3 days.
Yeah.
And I find that, yes, food waste, we are, as consumers, have an issue, but processors and manufacturers need to look at how they're packaging, what they're packaging and how much of it that they're packaging. Don't be wasteful in what you're doing. Don't package more than what consumers actually need, because then you're forcing people to waste food. Like it's a cycle. The food waste is across all sectors, and as long as the sectors make intentional changes and how they're doing things, yes, price points matter. But if you're selling cilantro at $3.99, imagine if you had a smaller bunch you could sell for $1.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like things of this nature
Yeah.
where
It makes so much sense.
it just makes so much sense. So it just makes, I don't know, it just, you're not losing money. You're selling product more efficiently.
Yeah.
It just makes sense. So things like that, cilantro was one because I just made my last batch of guacamole the other day. So that's why it was fresh in my mind. But it's just like things of that nature. If we were able to take small steps and just limit the amount of food that we are putting out, if processing manufacturers are limiting the amount of food that they're putting out there, retailers began limiting the amount of food that they're packaging and so forth. Wherever it's happening, there's always steps that people can take, but consumers really need to look at what they're eating, how much of it that they're eating, where they're wasting their food, where they're wasting their money. Consumers are wasting almost $2,000 in food on an annual basis.
Yeah.
Like that, $2,000 is a lot. That's more than what I probably spend over the entire year on food. So, I know that may not sound like a lot, but I know how much I spend on a monthly basis, and I know what my bills are, and I spend less than $2,000 a month. Sorry, $2,000 a year on my grocery bills. I know that for a fact because I know how much I spend on a monthly basis. So if everybody were to be able to do something like that, we are now targeting the retail sector. They make up 10% of our food waste issue, which is probably more, but at the last records were $49 billion. So 10% of that is $5 billion. I can deal with that market and take that and then scale that and be able to deal with it in a more aggressive manner. But consumer food waste is really the biggest issue. We can't control that. We cannot control, meaning our business, we cannot control how consumers waste their food. So if consumers were to take active steps in reducing the amount of food that they purchase, it's hard to do it. I know it. I bet, but being in my situation, I was forced to do it. So I know that it's possible. I'm not trying to put or change behaviors that I haven't changed myself. I wasn't someone who wasted food in the past anyways, but now I'm even more conscious of where I'm spending my money, and I'm ensuring that I'm not wasting food that I'm purchasing simply because I wasn't able to consume it by the end of the week or something like that.
I want to thank you so much. Like, this has just been an incredible conversation. So like your story, the work you're doing, our current climate, everything, like I feel like this has spanned, all from the retailers, big business, right down to what's happening like in our grocery baskets. So there's so much to think about it. So first, I thank you for all the amazing work you're doing.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
And I want to ask you, we'll put in the show notes, but I want you to tell people how it's best for them to reach out to you. And also, if there's anything you wanted to mention that we didn't cover or something that you want to underline, please do that.
Well, first of all, I'll say that to contact us, the website is B12Give. It's www.give.ca. So if you're looking at it, it reads B12Give.ca. Same with Instagram, Twitter, all of that. It's B12Give.ca. So that anyone can reach out to us there. Go to our website, review our website. If you like the platform, if you like what we're doing, if you're a food waste advocate, or if you are a retailer, you can contact us through our website. I'm always here looking for more partners. The more food we rescue, the more people we feed. So as long as we're able to keep that going and build that momentum, fantastic. I don't know if there's anything that I didn't mention that I should mention. But I will say this: within the climate that's happening today, yes, COVID has happened, and there's other injustices that are coming to light in the world that's happening. I feel empowered as a Black gay man launching a sustainability business, combating food insecurity with surplus food resources in today's climate. Because there are very few individuals that look like myself in this climate, in this space. Sustainability, tech platforms. Yes, there are a lot of people of color in tech, but when it comes to this particular type of industry, being in the food waste space or sustainability businesses and so forth. I haven't found any representation yet of anyone else that looks like me in this space. I'm sure there are others, and I'm anxious to meet them and see, what sort of network I can build. I'm looking to meet everyone, but specifically people of color who have been doing this type of work or who are maybe interested in doing this type of work. I didn't even anticipate. I was a banker for 16 years, moving into the nonprofit sector and then becoming an entrepreneur. I never anticipated being in this space, but now that I'm in it, I love it. I enjoy it. I love what I do. I love the impact that I'm having on people that I've never met before. I love the support that I'm receiving from people that I've never met before. I'm loving the recognition that we're getting from people that I've never met before. And it's happening in a climate where people like me aren't really paid attention to in typical situations like this. I will. I don't know if it's. I guess I'm proud to say that I've done this on my own.
Yes.
I've had no help from anyone. I've applied to accelerators that I've been denied from. I have applied to incubator groups that were looking to hone in on social entrepreneurs. I've been denied from them. I don't know why, but I've just been continuously, put aside, denied, left out, whatever. And each time that occurs, I say to myself, you know what, that's okay, because there's always somebody else that's willing to help me. There's always somebody else around the corner that's willing to share. There's always somebody else that's willing to support. So that's fine if I'm not getting support from these institutions. But at the same time, these institutions would have amplified my business a lot faster than what I've already done on my own.
Yeah.
But being able to have done it on my own and to say that I've done it on my own without the help of anyone else, that's just fact. That's not hyperbolic. I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm speaking fact. I have done this on my own with no one's help. I've had very little financial support other than through the revenue coming in from the business. I've had a small grant from the city of Vaughan, which I was appreciative to receive. But organizations, similar organizations like mine, who are doing not even because I don't think actually there are no other organizations like mine. Now I think about it, I am unique in this space. I will say that much. Although there are other food rescue agencies out there doing similar work, my business model is unique, and the way we're doing it is unique because we are redistributing food within the hour, where other agencies do it over a number of days. So our product offering is unique. Our service is unique. Me being able to do this on my own with no financial support is unique. This is the leanest startup I've ever heard of. I started my business with $1,500, $1,556 to be exact.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's amazing. So the way the system has been built for individuals like me has made this process a lot harder, but also has given me the strength and the confidence to keep moving forward and keep doing it and not stopping. I think as I said, with the climate that we're living in today, when it comes to racial injustice, organizations, the government just announced a $221 million program. I don't want to say it's a grant program, but a loan plus grant plus program that they've implemented to support Black entrepreneurs. Different organizations are looking and offering grants specifically to Black-run businesses. These are opportunities that would never have been afforded to us prior to COVID. So I'm sort of feeling really empowered in this space right now, because I know that people are looking at me through several eyes, but people are really looking at me and seeing like, okay, this person is doing something different. How can we support him here? And these are individuals I've never met. LinkedIn has been has just showered me with support. I'm being reached out to by individuals who I never even thought of, saying, hey, we saw your platform here, and we're wondering what we can do to support you. Just little things like that. Like, Adrian, I never, even when I had when we had our competition back in January, I never anticipated where this was going to go. I knew
we couldn't have.
No, we couldn't have. Like, I just didn't know where this was going to go. I knew that I was getting a lot of traction and a lot of attention, but I didn't know where this was going to go. And I knew something that my mother said to me when I was a child. She said, as a Black man, you're going to have to work twice as hard to get half as far. So you need to make sure that you keep that in the front of your mind at every point. So no matter where you go in life, you know that no matter what you're doing, you need to do it harder than those who are around you. And when I was starting this business, I kept saying to myself, well, this isn't really hard to do. Am I am I doing this properly? Like, am I working twice as hard to get half as far? And then all of a sudden, I noticed that I was working really hard.
Yeah.
I didn't. It's just that it was so normalized for me to take this food at the end of the event and redistribute to a shelter. That became normal after every single event. So that was not something where I felt that I was working hard. But then I realized, wait a minute, I'm the only one doing this in my company.
Yeah.
I'm the only one actually packing this food up at the end of the events, putting it in a backpack or putting it in a bag, putting it on my back, putting it on the handlebars of my bike, and redistributing it to a shelter. I was the only one doing that. So reflecting on what my mother was saying, I'm like, I guess I was working twice as hard to do this, but it's gotten me further than I've ever anticipated.
Well, and I just hear you saying too, like you're living it to give it too. Do you know what I mean? You're not
Yes.
crafting something, it's like you are there, doing it. So it's remarkable.
Yeah, I think that if COVID teaches anyone anything, is that um, this is sort of the perfect time, and I've had a lot of friends that have had to do this, where people are able to reevaluate their goals in life, what they're doing in life. Do they want to be the person that they are prior to COVID, or do they want to be this new version of themselves post COVID? And I've noticed that a lot of people have changed their minds. I mean, even with my business, I've had to restructure how we do things because of COVID. Actually, the Meals on Wheels type system that we're sending, I don't know what that's going to be called yet. I haven't really named it, but that service stemmed from COVID. I had no intention on doing that at all. But when I saw the need and saw the responses that were coming up and saw the people who were in their homes looking for food, because even some of the Meals on Wheels systems shut down. Like, food redistribution it just slowed down everywhere. And I saw how the need became so amplified. And it just, to myself, I'm like, wow, Tony, unbeknownst to you, you created the perfect platform at the perfect time that will combat two issues that you had no knowledge of 4 years ago.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say no knowledge, because yes, we know that people are always hungry, but food waste was just not on my mind.
But when we experience something, then it just comes from a completely different place.
100%. Lived experience is, I think, the best propellant for new and innovative ideas.
Yeah.
And I'm living proof.
Yes. And I thank you. And I'm glad that you said what you did at the end, because, with this episode and many things, but like, I celebrate you as a person, as an innovator, as this incredible mission and purpose. Like, it's just awesome and inspiring. And I love it. So thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And congrats on your podcast. I mean, to see that you were able to do this, because I don't believe you had this before we met. I believe you started this during COVID, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's also a product of COVID.
Yeah. So, I mean, see, like everybody, and it's funny because I just had somebody reach out to me who I've known for a couple of years. She reached out to me just the other day asking to do the exact same thing that I've just done here with you today. And she started her podcast. Actually, a couple of people have started podcasts since COVID. So I think, like, people need to, yes, people are really upset and they hate being at home. I'm a bit of an I'm sort of that, I'm an introvert with an extroverted side, if that makes any sense. Because I lived in such an extroverted world for 20 years. I didn't share this, but I worked in nightclubs for 20 years on the weekends as a part-time job. So I totally forgot to share that in our conversation. So I'm glad I'm sharing it now. So that's where all of this comes from, where I had this extroverted lifestyle, but I'm an introvert and I love being at home. When I was told that COVID was shutting us down, I was working from home anyway, so it was fine. I was sort of elated. I'm like, wow, I can stay home and not have to worry about, getting up and the basic things like having to shower to go to work. I can get up, stay in my pajamas, go to my couch, start working, do the work, talk to my colleagues, have meetings, and, sort of in life as usual kind of deal. But I think with this whole scenario, it allowed me, one, but as with yourself, but I think people should really look at this as an opportunity to reevaluate who they are, what they're doing, how they're doing it, what sort of message they want to leave in the world, what sort of presence they want to have, who their friends are. Make sure that your people and your friends and your network, I say, aligns with your values and who you are as a person. I've blocked a lot of people on Facebook. I've canceled a lot of deleted a lot of people's contacts in my phone simply because of their actions or words or behaviors since COVID started, primarily with regards to racial injustice. And I was just like, people's true colors are showing both good and bad during COVID. And, your true colors now are showing with this podcast. You're bringing people together in a different format. Other people's true colors are shown with, their bigotry or their racism. So I think COVID really, it changed the world globally. Obviously, we've seen what's happened in the world. I think people see things a little differently. People understand things. People aren't so quick to judge as much as I'm hoping, as much as they were in the past. And the support networks are just more readily available to people who they weren't so readily available to in the past. So it's an exciting time. Yes, it's a bit of a depressing moment because COVID eliminated our natural abilities of just going out and being social and having a life. But it forced me to realize who my circle is. I've had to let go of one of my closest friends of 25 years during this process. And that's something
I totally
I had
agree.
to learn. I had to learn this the hard way, but at the same time, I feel better from it. I'm not now required to be in this person's space anymore, knowing who this person really has been for the past 25 years. So it's things happen in your life. COVID happened to everybody. Everybody felt the brunt of COVID. Nobody suffered. I don't want to say nobody suffered more, but people suffered in different ways, but everybody suffered.
Yeah.
Some more than others, but everybody was suffering. So nobody could say, "Oh, I'm suffering this way," because the person beside them would say, "Oh, well, I'm suffering this way." Nobody was left out of this. COVID impacted the world, and I'm just hoping everybody looks at this and sees the benefits that's coming from it. I see the benefit as a Black man. I see the benefits that have stemmed from this. I just hope that the country below us,
yes, if you're listening, please, we're begging you.
See the benefit of what's come from this, and really just push forward and see the world through a different or fresh set of eyes, and step out of your bubble. Just realize that the world is not what you always assumed it to be. It's really, I actually feel that the way the world has been forever is now visible for everyone right now.
I was thinking that as you were talking, as uncomfortable as it can be for many people, things have just been brought into the light, right? And so when we can see them, we can do something about it.
Yeah. Once you see it, you can't ignore it.
No.
And you can either sit back and sort of turn a blind eye to it, but once you see it, you can't ignore it. It's there. You can't unsee what you've seen, and you can't unhear what you've heard. So people can either at this point choose to put their head in the sand, or they can choose to be a different person.
Yeah.
Make a difference, whatever that difference is. You don't have to be an activist. You don't have to be how can I explain this? You don't have to step out of your everyday life to make a difference. You can do something. Agree. You can do something. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of us are, and I'm one of them. I'm a keyboard activist because there's not much for me to do around the city. Yes, I can join a march, but and I give all of the credit to everyone who's out there on the front lines, really fighting for changes as a whole. But anybody can do anything. I'm living proof that anybody can do anything.
You and me both.
Like anybody can do anything. There is opportunity everywhere. And I say that because I just found out, and this is sort of a plug on my business.
Yeah.
Ashton Kutcher shared my platform to his followers on Facebook.
It's amazing. I just saw that. I
Amazing.
forgot to mention it too. I was thinking about it just right before we got on. Like, that's not
totally
small.
forgot. That's not small. And I didn't even realize this. Another colleague from Speaker Slam found it on Facebook and shared it with me on Monday. And I was like, what? I couldn't believe it. So I immediately shared it. I'm like, guys, Ashton Kutcher shared my platform. And his quote when he shared it was, "There is opportunity everywhere." And I was like, oh my God, that's so true. Like anybody can do anything as long as they, like in my case, I was dealing with food insecurity. I never anticipated it looking or coming out of it this way. But look at the issues that you see around you. When I first started my entrepreneurial endeavors, I was looking at social issues, homelessness, hunger, literacy, and social inclusion. Little did I know that business was going to dissolve into what it put me into, being food insecure and on social assistance, just to grow into this platform that's going to be able to combat food insecurity on a national scale. So as long as somebody has the capacity to sit back and just look at what it is that's going on around them, see where the issues are that they want to tackle. As I say, you don't need to be an aggressive activist, but you can do something. Whether you use your words in your own group to say, listen, guys, we as a network of people have the capacity to do this. Why don't we start something like this? Or why don't we help people like this? Or why don't we support this organization or this group, whatever it is? Just like with the ad hoc food programs that popped up, these people had other jobs. These people were bankers and lawyers and doctors. These people had regular jobs, but they had one common goal, which was to service those who were left out when COVID hit. And they started these ad hoc food redistribution programs, and they started moving food around the city. So it shows that it's just a matter of the situation that you're in. Find what it is that you want to have an impact on and go for it. Whether it be big or small, you can do anything you want.
I love it.
There is opportunity everywhere.
There is opportunity everywhere. Yeah. Tony, thank you so much.
Thank you, Adrienne. I really appreciate this.
Thank you for listening. May some of the wisdom shared here inspire your most intentional living. For more information about this episode, this podcast, intentional living, and my work in the world, please visit mayyouknowjoy.com. You can also find my May You Know Joy and Seeds of Intention cards there, and my book, Intentional Days. You'll also find details for the Intentional Days membership, where you can gain access to a thriving community of intentional souls and lots of regular inspiration. I've got you covered. Until next time, I wish you great joy and many intentional days.